Over the last 6 months, I've built more than 10 AI apps and learned just about everything you need to know to build with AI tools. I've made every mistake, and in this video, I'm going to save you hundreds of hours by telling you everything you need to know. To break this down, I'm going to give you 3 simple tips to put you ahead of 99% of all other AI app developers. And number 3 is specifically a game changer. Let's jump into it. The first tip that you need to know about, especially when you're building with tools like Cursor, is which model you should use. So tools like Lovable don't give you the option of what AI model they're going to code with, but when you're using Cursor, which I recommend doing as you learn more about building with AI apps, you're going to have this drop down here to select the model that you want to use when it's actually writing the code. These models differ both in their capabilities and essentially knowledge and how good of a coder they are. They also vary in their cost. Some of them are more expensive or less expensive for you to use, and some of them get more creative than the other ones. Here's a graphic provided from Cursor themselves that breaks down the different models and based on the task you want to use, which one to go with. And I agree generally with their breakdown here. So let's walk through it. First, you want to decide what's most important to you. Do you want control over what the model does, or do you want the model to figure it out? So if you want the model to figure it out, you might want something a little bit more creative, for example. If you want control, that means you want to give a specific task and you know what you want. So let's start off with on this branch, if you want control over the model more closely. Then we need to branch off into 2 different options. What kind of task are you working on? A small scoped change. Use Claude 3.5 Sonnet. I agree with this. 3.5 Sonnet is a less expensive model, and it just gets the job done with a very small scope to change. So one example of this could be, I want to change the color of the button on the page to blue. That's a very scoped example. You could do a little bit more than that, but just an example there. Then a larger task with clear instructions. Use 3.5 Sonnet again. It also does well with that. You can see kind of the general idea is 3.5 Sonnet is very good at following clear instructions. Or GPT 4.1. This is a newer model, but also does a very good job at just following instructions. So then let's jump into I want the model to figure it out. Then again, you want to break down into two different tracks. One is how complex is the task. If it's a routine or general use, 3.7 Sonnet, 2.5 Pro, or GPT 4.1 again. 4.1 is a very powerful model, and it can kind of fit into both. I personally use Gemini 2.5 Pro typically for this. If it's routine or general use, I really like 2.5 Pro. If that's not getting it, then I'll switch to Claude 3.7 Sonnet. Claude 3.7 Sonnet is just better at being creative, essentially, and so is 2.5 Pro. In my experience, I find Gemini to be less likely to make mistakes than 3.7 Sonnet. It's a little more hesitant to do anything too crazy, but sometimes that means it won't get the job done, and then I switch to 3.7 Sonnet because it's more likely to just do it and write the code. Then if it's very complex or ambiguous, use O3. This is OpenAI's most powerful model. It is also the most expensive model to use on Cursor right now. But if it's a complex task that is ambiguous and you just kind of want to let AI go with it, then O3 is the model you want to use. So this is super important if you want to be better than the other AI app developers out there. You need to understand the different models and which ones you should use at different times. On to tip number 2. You do not have to stay locked in to the AI coding platform that you started with. One of the benefits of using an AI coding platform, as opposed to using something like Bubble or Webflow, is that you own the code. So all of the code that Lovable writes, for example, you can export that code or sync it to GitHub. They make it very easy to sync your code to GitHub. We have a video on this. Check it out in our channel to see the step-by-step instructions of how to do this. But if you're starting Lovable or Bolt, for example, you are not stuck there. You can sync with GitHub and then bring it into Cursor and then start working in Cursor where you have this more granular control over the models that you want to use. And it just gives you a little bit more power and fine-tuned control over your AI coding. So just know that just because you start in one platform doesn't mean you are stuck in it. Also, if you are working in Cursor, you can super easily use a tool like Windsurf, which is another way to AI code on your local server with your local system. And you can switch back and forth super easily. You can also use tools like Claude Code, for example. So there's a lot of different options. Again, we have a video, another video on how to do this and go between the different platforms. This is something where if you only use Lovable, if you're just stuck with it, you're definitely going to miss out on some fine-tuned control, and you're not going to get as good of a final product. On to tip number 3, and this one is super important, is you need to understand how API calls work in order to be a top AI app developer. So an API call, if you are new to APIs, basically allows your app to talk to another service and then bring that capability into your app. Just as an example of this, I built this app called cartoons.app. I built it with AI coding, and this uses the OpenAI GPT-4o image model to send an original image to OpenAI, and then we get back the cartoon result. So this would apply for any API that you're going to use. So here on the OpenAI platform, for example, you can see everything that it has the capability to do. So chat completion, image completion, audio completion, for example. So here's the audio API where you can create speech by sending text and getting output as an MP3. LLMs are very good at understanding API documentation. So even if you're not a coding expert, if you just go to API documentation, copy the request, paste it into Cursor, you usually want to copy the request and the example output, but in this case, the output is just an audio file, but just let it know what the input and output should be. So for transcription, for example, you would copy the input and the output and give both of that to the AI. And then that is usually going to be enough for it to integrate that into your app. So that's just something to be aware of, is LLMs usually are able to understand the API documentation very well. This also applies when you're using tools like Lovable. Using a tool like Lovable is really nice for integrating APIs because it connects to Supabase automatically and will set up the edge functions for you. Edge functions are basically what are going to call that API and get you the results. So something that I like to do is start building my app, build out the APIs in Lovable. I find Lovable does a really good job at integrating APIs into your app. So another little tip there is use Lovable for the beginning, and then I like to switch over to Cursor once the APIs are integrated and we have our database set up and things like that. I hope you found these 3 tips helpful. If you know these 3 tips, you're already going to be ahead of many developers who are getting started. If you want to learn more about AI and no-code, click the link in the description to go to No-Code MBA. Check out our in-depth courses covering building AI apps, automations, and websites. We also put together a list of 59 AI app business ideas. Click the link and enter your email to get that for free. Subscribe to our channel to get more free content like this, and leave a comment letting us know what you want to see in the future. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.